Okay, so today in this video we'll be going through how to import images into your Blender workspace so you can work from different inspirations or even use them as a blueprint to make your models. So today we're going to do a box model of a character. But first of all we need some reference. So it's very simple and very easy to add this in. So let's just for now hide this cube here. Okay, and go into your little viewpoint preset here and click on the X so it's completely flat. Okay, so you can't, instead of being in perspective mode like this, you should have your viewport more like this so you can see the entire grid, and you should see the blue and the green axis lines here. Okay, so all you need now is to make sure you save an image to your documents, so then you can either as a JPEG or a PNG or any sort of image format. Any sort of image format should work in this. So here's what I'm going to be using here. Okay, I'm going to be using a T-pose for a human, and that's what you need to do. Minimize that, and bang, your model is just about to give it a start here. But now let's just select this, and it's known as empty, but we'll get onto that in a moment. And let's just try to align this so it's more central. Okay? And just take your time and make sure this is all central as well. To help you out, you can find different ways of making sure this is all in line and everything, and that's how I roughly get the basic gist of it as well. Okay, so now we have this one side, but we need another axis to make sure we get the proportions right as well. So all we need to do is duplicate it. Okay, and then right click, and it will just keep it in the same position, and that's what we want. Now you just need to rotate it about 90 degrees, like so. Okay, and now we just need to move it into position, like so. So we want the image to be more central. Okay, like so. Okay, so now when we look at it from this side, we can get the basic shape of the human. And from this side we can get the proportions right for the arms and legs. Okay, so now we have these two here. We've got these two empty objects here, and it's in this collection already, but we don't want that in our collection. So let's just say new collection, rename it as background reference. Okay, now all we need to do is just select both of them, drag them in, collapse it, then we don't have to worry about it. Okay, so now with this box, let's just get rid of it, and now we can add in a new one. Okay, so we're going to be box modeling around this now. So let's just scale this down a bit, so we have a bit more leeway of what we're playing with here. And let's go to edit mode, go down to this blue bench here, go to add modifiers, which is the modifier properties, and go down to generate here, and go down to mirror. Okay, so with this we should be able to press that, make sure it's on the y-axis, and now we have everything mirrored. Mirroring this will just allow us to do half the work as what we would normally need to do. Okay, so make some slight adjustments so it's more central. There we are, sorted. And now we'll go back to edit mode on our box. There we are. So now here we only need to do half of the work effectively. So let's go back to edit mode and make sure, let's just start in more the hips area. Okay, so now that we have this selected, let's go to face mode, which we're already on. Go to extrude and extrude it up just below the rib cage with start. Yeah, and then extrude again to around where the base of the neck is, just about here. Okay, so now with this, let's start modeling everything and putting everything into specs. So what I've just done is run into wireframe mode. So now I can see where everything is and where the boxes are. So where I want my stuff here and over here is just to make sure that everything lines up nicely, like so. Just give it some dismisses as well. Okay, let's move these two up so they're a bit more level with the buttons and the coordinates. Okay, so now once we're here, let's move these down so they're more at the bottom of the neck here. Okay, and just make some more minor adjustments just to make sure that they all fit. There we are. And now from here we can just make some tapering in just to make sure. There we are. Okay, so now when we have this, we can use the edge loop cut and make sure that we can add a bit more detailing, like so. The hand's going to be a bit in the way, so you just have to use your imagination a bit. There we are. And move these roughly around where the arms would be, and just bring these up a bit. Okay, like so. Now we want to extrude here just to help form the neck. In the shoulder areas, like so. Bring this forward and leave that roughly where it is, like so. And then extrude again just to help form the neck. Okay, so with here you want to make sure that you're having a bit of an angle like so. Okay, it's because your head along here is going to be a bit more of an angle. Okay, so we're just creating the neck joint effectively, like so. Okay, and we can curve off the neck, I think, because right now everything is looking a bit boxy at the moment. Okay, I'll make sure you just move your cube into this section so you're not in that collection there. Okay, so as you can see, everything is a bit like so. Okay, so it's looking quite boxy at the moment, but we can fix that a bit later. Okay, so we'll leave the neck for now and go to the shoulder. You want to inset the face. Wash it down and bring it out a bit, like so. And now you can just form your body around that, like so. Okay. Okie dokie. And now let's just select the bottom here and do the same. Insert face and extrude. Oh, let's just extrude for now. And bring that down to where it's needed. So you want to make sure these are the same size, like so. And trying to move it so it's in the center of the loop. Like so. And let's make some minor adjustments as well. Okay. And let's just put a loop cut there and help just make some adjustments. Like so. Okay. So right now, if we just hide that, we got a basic shape of a human here. Okay. So. There we go. So if you're in that little, if your model is a bit dark, make sure you have this selected as well. So you've got viewport shading. Okay. I'm constantly going into wireframe mode, so yeah, this allows me to see through the model, which will allow me to make the adjustments I need to do, which I do highly recommend that you do as well. So let's move on. And let's continue on with the legs first. So we want to extrude again to roughly around where the ankle is, and just make some adjustments so they fit the ankle as well. Put it back like so, that fits. There we are. And again, let's put a loop cut here just to help for the actual leg. But we want to move that up. Like so. There we are. Now again, just make some minor adjustments when needed. There we are. Okay. So let's extrude one more time. Go down. Okay, so here we are, just forming the actual foot. Then grab this front and extrude again, just to help form the foot. Okay. Again, this is like a very basic box model, so you don't need to go into huge amounts of detail here. Because you can always go in a bit later, add a couple more edge loops like so, and just add some more detail like so. Okay. And there's your basic foot. Okay. So let's go back to the arm. So make sure there's some minor adjustments that we want. Again. And now let's just select that. And extrude. Extrude out to roughly around where the elbow is. You can see as that little mark here. And again, select the bits and move them down so they're all in the appropriate positions. Okay. You just need to make sure you squash it a bit and scale it down on the x-axis, so you're actually forming the actual elbow. Okay. Then extrude again to roughly where the wrist is, and again make sure you scale down to the appropriate size, like so. And make sure you have a little bit of a bend in the arm as well, and again, like in the legs, just go in, add the loop cuts, bring up the scale a bit, and with the actual bicep as well, just bring up the axis as well, like so. So you're having a bit of a bend in there. Okay. So that creates the arm for you. Okay. Now, let's move to the head and extrude. Make sure you scale correctly. So then you move this one here down to where the chin is, and you can leave this one just about here. Then continue extruding up just to form the head. Rotate it a bit so you try and get as flat as possible. Put it roughly around here. Again, scale so that's roughly around the same size. Then extrude again. Extrude one more time just to form the top of the head. Like so. This will mean that your head is very square, but still we can fix that. So go into here, just form the chin, and move these ones out. So move these ones in. Should help form the basic shape of the head, like so. Okay. Okay. So now that you've got the basic main body, legs, arms and head, let's just move on to the hands. Okay, so what you want to do here is extrude again, just roughly where the main palm is, and where the base of the fingers are, so about here. Okay, then you want to add a new loop about here, and another one going straight across. Okay, that will create an edge all the way here, but we can use that to help form the chest a bit later. So now, deselecting the loop cut, you want to select this one and this one here. Nope. I'm going to select these two. But as you can see, that we've selected the entire part, which means that we'll have to have another loop here. Because we only want a small part of the part, not the entire bit. Okay, so select this one and this one, like so. Inset the face, scale it on the y-axis so it's a bit smaller, move it around a bit, just pull it out a bit, so. Now you can extrude. And now you have to do a bit of a playing around just to make sure everything fits correctly. So, because this is going to be the main socket slash joint, so you want to make sure that it fits like so. Okay. I'm trying to make it circular as possible because this is where we're going to be extruding the actual thumb. As best as you can without deforming it very much. So that will do for now. Then select everything. Put a bit more if it doesn't fit. There we go. Okay. And from here we can just extrude. And from here, now you can use things as a bit more of a reference to make sure everything fits a bit nicer. Okay. Let's turn everything back on so we can use it for reference. Okay, so we just need to make sure that we can bring that over here. Okay, let's just shrink this down a bit. It's a bit tighter. Now we can just add a bit of a couple of edge loops just to add a bit of a curve to it. Like so. Okay. Now since we're here, we'll need to use the loop cut. So we'll need to make this a little bit wider. Okay. From here, get to this cross here, go into the middle to this edge, and go all the way down to here, then be back to this cross section here. Because now we are making new polygons to extrude our fingers from. Okay, so once you've drawn that, just press enter, and now that has confirmed where you want the fingers to go. Okay, so now I just want to make sure there's a little bit of curvature in there. And like so, with just extrude from here. Okay, and select the other two and extrude. Doing it this way will just allow us to select everything a bit separately, a bit easier, and it doesn't come out in one block. So now what we need to do is just make sure we just make some, just to separate them out a bit, like so. Give them a bit of a rotate, and move them out. There we are. And let's just extend all of these out to where they're supposed to be. Okay. So let's use that as a reference. And then, since we don't have a top view, might as well hide this and then just edit these so they're not so long. Okay, and make them look a little bit more natural instead of something out of Slenderman. Okay. So if you use your own hand as reference, you'll see that your thumb would mainly just reach roughly around here, just below your first knuckle. So let's mark that off. Okay, so let's put that knuckle there. Now let's use that as reference for the rest. But before we do that, again, everything still looks a bit too close to each other. So let's just move them out a bit more. Okay. So then, when you eventually get into sculpting and everything like that, this will make things a little bit easier to go in between. Okay. Yeah. So let's go back to what we were doing originally. Okay. So let's just add this knuckle here. Yeah. And then there'll be one knuckle there. Let's bring that up a bit more. There we are. And then use that as a guidance to where all the other knuckles are as well. So your middle finger, your knuckle will be slightly higher, like so. And then about there, this one will be a bit roughly around the same height as your index finger. And this is your pinky. So it'll be about in line to the tip of your thumb as well, like so. Okay, and that is your hand effectively done. Okay, so let's just make sure that it is a bit of an angle to them, so it's a bit more rested. Just angle them down like so. Okay, having these bends in here like so will just make it a little bit easier for when rigging. Again, if you want to make some light adjustments, go into wireframe, which can easily go into by clicking this, and just make some minor adjustments as well, just to space them out a bit more. If you feel like you just need that little bit more space just to play around with. Okay, and that is effectively the box model done. But again, we're not too happy with this, because again, it's looking a bit lacking. Let's just say. Some minor adjustments here because some bits and bobs did not work. There we are. So let's bring up our references again. Go to wireframe. There we are. Like so. And let's have a look at what we need. So, we want to define where certain parts of the body are. So let's say, okay, let's define where the rib cage is exactly. Okay, let's just select these words here and bring it down. So about here. So when you go back and turn off the reference, okay, you know exactly, okay, this area is the rib cage. Okay? Let's turn back on the reference. Go to wireframe. Okay, and let's see, okay, where did the hips start? Okay, let's move them again to about here. And this is where the groin is. Double check, yep, that's where the groin is. Let's move that down to about here. Straight down. So now, when you turn off, okay, you know exactly where the rib cage is, also you know exactly where the hips are. So this, you want to try to keep to the anatomy as best as you can, because when you're rigging, this area, when you're rotating, so like from side to side, it'll allow you to squash and stretch those areas with a lot better ease than if the geometry and the general topology, as you can see on this reference here, it'll allow your model to squash and stretch without causing any major defects when rigging. But that's just getting a bit ahead of ourselves, but it's always important to say, okay, keep in mind where you want your topology. Okay? So, let's try to add a little bit more detail. Okay? So, let's say I want to make some adjustments to here. Okay? I want to make more adjustments here. Let's do that. So, add a bit more curvature and bring these in a bit more, like so they're not all flat faces. Okay, which is the same with the back. Okay, as you can see, it's a bit hard to see, but we've added a bit more curvature to it. And now, let's go into a little bit more detail by adding a couple more edge loops here and there. And with these edge loops here, I just want to select these ones here first, bring them over, because now we're going to be forming the actual the breast of the man. Okay, and add a new edge loop along here, and another one along here. Okay, with all this new geometry, you can now start forming your certain muscle groups as well. So what we want is something more similar to like so. So use the reference to your main advantage. And try to follow the topology as best you can. Okay. Okay. Like so. Okay, so you're making the form the actual breast of the man. Now we can just move these in slightly, just create that little indent. And we can just select these faces here, just to help pop it out a bit, like so. But this is still looking a bit square. So all we need to do is just move them around a bit, just to make sure everything is like so. Like so. So now we're just forming the general shape of the body and cleaning up and curving the edges, like so. So there aren't any major sharp creases and everything like that. Okay. And again, just take your time just to clean up some of the topology around. So now that we have some more time here. Okay. Remember just to lay out where you want your rib cage. So this is where this line here. So again, just going to walk down. Just help form the rib cage. Again, you can just take your time just to make your adjustments. Okay. Just doing the same around the stomach area. But again, you still want to have that little bit of a curvature to show where the stomach is. Just don't want to make it too sharp. But we can easily fix that by just adding a couple more edge loops, like so. Okay, also don't forget to keep referencing your reference, just to make sure that you've got the basic shape of your character sorted. Okay, we can just move these up top form. Okay. So, when you're at this stage, you just want to make sure that you just want to turn off your mirror for a minute. Just press the Y, don't close it down, and just find where everything starts. Okay? So especially down, make sure you don't delete all the faces that you need. So you just need to make sure, don't select these two, select this one, and epically all of the internal faces. Because when you go to apply the mirror, it will weld all of these internal surfaces together. And if you want to sculpt with this character, that will provide a problem, because when you start, for example, sculpting and smoothing, then it will just start going internal and it makes it look like the character's imploding on himself. And that's something you don't particularly want. So you just need to make sure that you delete all the internal faces so that does not happen. Okay, and it just cleans everything up and it makes sure that you don't have to worry about it later. Okay, so that's the main body. You can see that we've also defined where the breasts are. Okay, and usually male breasts go a bit further underneath, like so. But again, you can play around with these kinds of things a bit later on. Okay. So let's just try to clean up this neck area a bit more as well. Okay. Because we've got an awful lot of birds here that can easily help form the shape of everything that we need. So we don't need to keep creating new vertices along here and new geometry when we can just move geometry around just to help us out a bit more. Okay? Just like so. Make sure you keep an eye out on where your actual head begins. So like these birds here, just bring it down Okay, so just to help indicate, okay, this is where the skull starts. Okay, just make sure you do that. Okay, so we know that this point from here, this is the neck, and this is the start of the skull. Okay, just make sure you have those clear lines so then you don't get confused later on. Okay, and then we can just start playing around, moving some geometry around, just to make sure that the head, you know, looks like a head instead of just a square box. Okay. But all of this is a bit time consuming. Just take your time, make sure you get it right the first time. Okay. Okay. There we are. Now that's forming a nice head there for us to work with. Again, we just need to make some more minor adjustments just to make sure it all fits nice and snug. Okay, so that's the front that we basically want. Make sure that you form the chin nice. There we are. Now let's have a bit of play around with the back of the head, because this is still looking quite square. So let's just curve things around a bit so they're not looking so boxy. Okay. Again, just take your time, try to get it right the first time, because this will help you when you're going into the future. Just making sure that everything is in place. Okay, you might see some little gaps, but that can be easily done by playing around with the merge threshold here. So there's nothing to really worry about there. Okay, again, just make some more minor adjustments just to play around. Like so. There we are. Okay, we can leave that like so for now. Actually, let's just move that a bit further down. Okay, so now with all of that sorted, we could just move that a little bit further up there. Sorted. Okay. So that's the basic head sorted. Okay, and if we look at our references again, go into wireframe. So you want to try to line up your lines here, just where the eyes would be. Okay, so you're helping yourself out just by starting out where the lines would be, where the eyes would be. Like so, and move these sides just where the ears, the top of the ear, where they actually attach to the skull. You can just see it here. That's where you want your line just to start. Okay, so this is just mainly just helping you out. Okay, where am I going to be putting everything? Okay, if you want to do a face, that is. But again, it's always good to get into the practice of things. So now, with just this one line, you know exactly where you want your eyes, which is here, yeah, and you know roughly where your ears would start, and also where your nose should be and your mouth. Okay, so your nose and mouth should be in this section here. Okay, but we won't be going into that amount of detail today, because we're just trying to form the box model. Okay, so we've done the arms, the main torso and the head. Now let's just get on with the legs a bit. Okay, so again, just select these corners here, if they let me. Just hide that for now. Here, and just move them around a bit so we have a bit more area to play around. Just curve them in a bit, because again, our bodies do not have right angles or any sharp corners. Now we just bring them in slightly so that adds a bit more curvature to it. And again, do the same here, because our legs do not look like that. So curve, bring them in, push them back a bit, bish bash bosh. We've got our front of our legs done. Now just get into the back. Again, do the same. There we are. So now we should have roughly nice circular legs to play with. Okay, so these are our knees here. But we don't particularly want to move any of that around. So let's just play around with this a bit. Add a bit more curvature and definition to where the actual parts of the legs will be. Okay, again, keep referring to your reference. Okay. Again, yeah, make sure you keep referring to your reference. Make sure your knees are like so. These aren't packed far enough, there we are, and that fixes that. And then we can just adjust this. So it's a bit confusing with this particular image, where the actual heels are and the ankles are, but you can just make it out if I just hide this. You can just make it out where everything is. So you want to make sure you keep an eye on that. Okay. So that's how our foot wants to be. Now let's just make sure our curvature is right for the foot. Again, because our feet are not squares or blocks. So let's just have a bit of play around with this. Add a bit of curvature. But again, we can get away with a little bit of harsh angles. Mainly because, again, this is a box model, so we can get away with it. But when we want to add more detail to it, you can always try to make it a bit nice, look a bit nicer. Okay, so let's just angle everything down. Again, just make sure that you look at the reference correctly, because yeah, I made that mistake just then. I wasn't looking too carefully at the reference. Okay, so your foot should be looking roughly like so. Okay, let's move your feet back like so. And there we are. Okay, and that just forms the basic foot. Okay, and you just want to make sure that you've got the basic shape of your foot correct. So I'm going to have that pushed out and this kind of stuff pushed in. Okay. can have a bit of a play around with the overall shape, like so, and there we are. Okay, so once we got the general shape, again, just go to the sides here, make sure that they're not completely, don't have complete right corners or anything like that, or flat faces, because of course the human body has curves in it, as they keep saying. So let's just make sure that make sure everything is curved. Okay. Yeah. Again, some minor adjustments. Take your time. Get it right the first time, and let's just add some more vertices, edges, and faces just to play around with. Add a bit more definition and shape. Okay. Again, so just got that just right. I'll have a bit of play around with this one. Do the same down here as well, but let's just take this in. Okay, so this now is forming the actual muscle that we want. So let's do another one there. There we are. And that's the kind of shape we want. Yeah, the muscles seem a bit more over-defined, but we can leave it as that. Okay. So just a tad off. Just make some minor adjustments. Again, once you've at this stage, then you can basically start box modeling anything you want. So that's just to show you how to start a basic box model of a humanoid character. Okay. But this is effectively a nude character. But if you want to box model clothing on top of it, so you don't have to do straight away, okay, need a box model clothing over the top of it, I would recommend just to do it like this, then you can model the box clothing over the top. Then you can delete the internal faces, like the actual original mesh, because it'll just help you with proportion wise and making everything look correct. Okay? But also, make sure you do have your references with you, because it makes modeling so much quicker and easier, and you get all the proportions correct as well. Okay? Well, this is how you make a very basic box model of a humanoid character, and later on we'll be going into how to do a face and general topology. So as you can see here, you've followed how to do the basic topology of a character, and this is basically what you want to strive towards. Okay? I shall see you all later.